Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news dated November 2019. IRS increases enforcement action on syndicated conservation easements. But first, at our website at accountinginstruction.info, we have many classes related to taxation, including a class that will allow you to create an Excel worksheet, worksheet where you can enter adjusting entries as well as tax entries. Huge benefit if you're going to be doing taxes for a business type entity. We have a general tax course as well as more specific tax courses. These courses include much more than just instructional videos. Any course purchased on this website does support all the content that we create. Consider purchasing a course here. Support the channel, support the content that we are making at accountinginstruction.info. That's accountinginstruction.info. Washington. The Internal Revenue Service announced today a significant increase in enforcement actions for syndicated conservation easement transactions, a priority compliance area for the agency. Coordinated examinations are being conducted across the IRS in the Small Business and Self-Employed Division, Large Business and International Division, and Tax Exempt and Government Entities Division. Separately, investigations have been initiated by the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. These audits and investigations cover billions of dollars of potentially inflated deductions as well as hundreds of partnerships and thousands of investors. We will not stop in our pursuit of everyone involved in the creation, marketing, promotion, and wrongful acquisition of artificial, highly inflated deductions based on these aggressive transactions. Every available enforcement option will be considered, including civil penalties and, where appropriate, criminal investigations that could lead to criminal prosecutions, said IRS Commissioner Chuck Rettig. Our innovation labs are continually developing new, more extensive enforcement tools that employ advanced techniques. If you engaged in any questionable syndicated conservation easement transaction, you should immediately consult an independent, competent tax advisor to consider your best available options. It is always worthwhile to take advantage of various methods of getting back into compliance by correcting your tax returns before you hear from the IRS. Our continued use of ever-changing technologies would suggest that waiting is not a viable option for most taxpayers. In December 2016, the IRS issued Notice 2017-10. There's a PDF link here. You'll have a link to this item or this location in the description, which designated certain syndicated conservation easements at listed transactions. Specifically, the notice listed transactions where investors in pass-through entities received promotional materials offering the possibility of a charitable contribution deduction worth at least 2.5 times their investment. In many transactions, the deduction taken is significantly higher than 250% of the investment. Syndicated conservation easements are included on the IRS's 2019 Dirty Dozen, in quotes, list of tax scams to avoid. Quote, abusive syndicated conservation easement transactions undermine the public's trust in private land conservation and defraud the government of revenue, in quote, says Rettig says. Putting an end to these abusive schemes is a high priority for the IRS, in quotes. Taxpayers may avoid the imposition of penalties related to improper contributions deductions if they fully remove the improper contribution and related tax benefits from their returns by timely filing a qualified amended return or timely administrative adjustment request. The IRS comprehensive compliance efforts are focused on the abusive syndicated conservation easement transactions described in Notice 2017-10, recognizing that there are many legitimate conservation easement transactions. The IRS is fully committed to putting an end to the abusive syndicated conservation easement transactions and holding accountable the individuals and entities who promoted, assisted with, or participated in these schemes. The IRS is committing significant examination and investigative resources to vigorously audit the entities and individuals involved in this scheme, including those who fail to properly disclose their participation as required. Additionally, the IRS is also litigating cases where necessary, with more than 80 currently docketed cases in the tax court. In addition to grossly overstating the value of the easement that is purportedly donated to charity, these transactions often fail to comply with the basic requirements of claiming a charitable deduction for a donated easement. The IRS has prevailed in many cases involving these basic requirements and has now established a body of law that the IRS believes supports disallowance of the deduction in a significant number of pending conservation easement cases. Where it hasn't done so already, the IRS will soon be moving the tax court to invalidate the claimed deductions in all cases where the transactions fail to comply with the basic requirements, leaving only the final penalty amount to be determined. In addition to auditing participants, the IRS is pursuing investigation of promoters, appraisers, tax return preparers, and other. Further, the IRS is evaluating numerous referral of practitioners to the IRS Office of Professional Responsibility. The IRS will develop and assert all appropriate penalties, including penalties for participants, 40% accuracy-related penalty, appraisers penalty for substantial and gross violation misstatements attributable to incorrect appraisals, promoters, material advisors, and accommodating entities, penalty for promoting abusive tax shelters, and penalty for aiding and abetting understatement of tax liability, as well as return preparers, penalty for understatement of taxpayers' liability by a tax return preparer. In December 2018, the Department of Justice filed a complaint seeking to stop several individuals and entity from organizing, promoting, selling allegedly abusive syndicated conservation easement transactions. The IRS continues to work with the Department of Justice in this area and reminds taxpayers that continued disclosure of syndicated conservation easement transactions is required under Notice 2017-10.